Hi there, Alison here with another Cab Franc du jour. Today we are in Saumur-Champigny and we're looking at the Arnaud Lambert 2019 Montée des Roches Saumur-Champigny. Arnaud Lambert is one of my all-time favorite vignerons, not only in Saumur-Champigny, but really in the entire Loire Valley as it relates to Cabernet Franc. And over the last 10 years, since Arnaud has taken over the domaine full-time since his father's passing in 2011, Arnaud has really honed his approach to Cabernet Franc through an improved understanding of his vineyard parcels, their soils, as well as a strong focus on organic viticulture. And when I had a chance to visit the domaine back in May, it was fascinating to me to talk soils and viticulture with Arnaud and learn how his winemaking has evolved in order to get his ideal expression of Cabernet Franc from his vineyards. Montée des Roches is one of 3 red cuvées that is coming from vines located in the commune of Saint-Cyr-en-Bourg, along with Terre Rouge and Clos Molleton. And seeing as though I have done some deep dives into the terroirs of other communes in Saumur-Champigny, it seems only fitting that I do one for Saint-Cyr-en-Bourg today. So Saint-Cyr-en-Bourg is one of 3 communes that is set back from the Loire River in Saumur-Champigny, along with Varennes and Chassé. And Saint-Cyr-en-Bourg is actually the commune that is the furthest south in the appellation. The commune starts around 5 kilometers southwest of the Loire River and stretches about 2 kilometers from north to south. And there's 2 areas for viticulture in this commune. In the eastern part of the commune, there's an area of vineyards that hugs this forested area, and these vines generally have western exposures. And then in the western part of the commune, we have more vineyards. These vineyards are bordered to the west by the Tué River, and they stretch east about 1.5 kilometers. And these vineyards in the western part will have any number of exposures, north, south, east, even western exposures, depending on the lieu-dit and the parcel. In terms of soils, unlike some other communes in the Saumur-Champigny appellation, the soils of Saint-Cyr-en-Bourg are actually a little bit easier to define. In terms of the vineyards themselves, we have the majority of the vineyards are sitting on elevations, I should say, between 40 and 60 meters above sea level. And this is where we find the Middle Turonian tuffeau chalk, which here it is known as craie verte, and it's a glauconitic micaceous chalk. And then we have 2 pockets of vineyards in the western part of the commune that are at a slightly higher elevation, around 65 to 70 meters above sea level. And this is where we find the Upper Turonian yellow tuffeau chalk. And while the majority of the vines are on the Middle Turonian tuffeau chalk, there is a lot of variability in terms of the textures and the depths of the topsoils, as well as the stoniness of the topsoils from lieu-dit to lieu-dit and parcel to parcel. And this will inevitably impact viticulture in terms of the vine's access to water, vine vigor, potential yields, bud break, rootstock choices, etc. So today's wine is coming from on average 35-year-old vines from parcels totaling around 1.5 hectares. And the vines are located in the western part of Saint-Cyr-en-Bourg. The vines are on an eastern exposure, and we are on the Middle Turonian tuffeau chalk here. And in terms of topsoil, the impact here is mostly clay. We have about 20 centimeters of a predominantly clay topsoil. There's a bit of sand and silt in there too, but mostly clay. And then we have a subsoil that is sand and silt, and that's about 30 centimeters or so. And then we hit the tuffeau chalk bedrock right after that. And when I was in the Loire back in May, Arnaud and I did a little bit of a vineyard tour, and you can imagine my excitement when we pulled up to the first vineyard block and Arnaud pulls a shovel out of the back of his truck, and we actually dug different holes in the parcel or in the vineyards that we visited in order to look at the composition and the textures of the topsoils together. And what was interesting about this block is that the clay was really quite cool, particularly compared to the soils that were in the block that we visited previously, which had a bit more sand. And while, I've studied wine for a long time and I read that clay is in fact a cooler soil, but it was another thing to hold a chunk of clay in my hand and feel the density, feel the compactness, feel the cool temperature of this particular soil. And the impact of this clay, as well as our proximity to the tuffeau chalk bedrock, really influence Arnaud's approach to this wine in the cellar. So from a winemaking perspective, all the fruit for this wine is hand harvested and it is destemmed, and it's left 100% whole berry for the fermentation. And fermentation is done with indigenous yeast in a combination of 1/3 concrete egg as well as the remainder in stainless steel. And the time on skins is about 10 to 12 days, and the maceration is through infusion. Now, in terms of the maceration time as well as Arnaud's approach to extractions, this is really the significant evolution in Arnaud's approach with Cabernet Franc in the cellar. In the last 10 years, he's really dialed back, well, particularly in recent years, but he's really dialed back on the maceration times as well as his approach to extraction, really focusing on infusion without doing pump overs or punch downs or anything like that. In terms of the aging for this wine, 50% is in older oak barrels, 2 to 3 year old oak barrels, and the other 50% is in concrete vats, and it ages for about 8 to 12 months. And then the wine is then reassembled and it's aged together in stainless steel for about 6 months before it is then bottled. So let's dive into this wine. Now, if there's 3 words that I could use to describe Arnaud's approach with Cabernet Franc as it relates to the fruit profile, is purity, clarity, and freshness. And this wine has all of that in spades. The fruits for me lean a little bit more blue and red. I'm getting a bit of wild blueberry here, a bit of Morello cherry. There's a touch of raspberry here as well. And I think the pyrazines are in a nice spot. And I would say that the fruit and the savory or earthiness is on equal footing together. And the pyrazines come through for me as very herbal in nature. I'm getting soft herbs like sage, savory, maybe even tarragon. Could even be basil in there. There's also a nice cedarwood note, and there is a floral element to this wine. And I can't quite put my finger on what the floral is here, but it's not violet, and that is for sure. But there is a certain floral aroma to the wine. On the palate, I'm seeing a bit more like tiny crunchy berries on the palate, like a lingonberry or something like that. There's a nice spice profile as well on the palate. I'm getting a little bit of allspice, not clove. Clove, again, too pungent. Allspice is a little bit more of that warming spice, but a bit more on the delicate side. The acidity is very bright, very sprightly. This wine has a ton of acidity, which I absolutely love about Loire Valley Cabernet Franc. And then in terms of the tannins, and one thing that is a defining character about Arnaud and his approach with tannins and Cabernet Franc is there is an inherent silkiness to the way the wine feels in the mouth and how it envelops the palate. With this wine is intended for longer term aging, so there's a little bit more of a tannin tug to the tongue. There's a nice crushed velvet thing going on and a bit of that chalkiness on the finish, which is providing nice structure in combination with the acidity. I love this wine. And while the wine is a medium body, it does have ample texture and weight to the middle palate. You know, there is some density. You do sense that there is a bit more of a clay impact here because there is a certain compactness to the wine, a certain density, as I said. And obviously this wine is quite young. It's a 2019. This is probably going to be at its best, well, starting, I would say, in about 5 or so years' time. But for now, considering how youthful this wine is, it is still so remarkably elegant. And that is another hallmark to Arnaud's approach with Cabernet Franc, is all of the wines have a certain grace and finesse and just polish, but also there's also something kind of relaxed, and there is that ease and companionability about them as well. You know, you can sense that this is a serious wine. There's a certain quiet confidence about it as well, which I think is very much distinctly Arnaud. And he explained to me that 2019 was a very pivotal vintage for him in terms of his approach with Cabernet Franc. And really since 19 going forward, he's really honed in on how he visualizes Cabernet Franc in terms of in the glass and the expressions that he wants to get from his vineyards. And if you have not had a chance to try any of the wines from Arnaud Lambert, you need to find something. His Clos Mazurique and Terre Rouge are his early drinking cuvées. They're a little bit higher volume, so they might be a bit easier to find. But these are definitely wines that need to be on your radar because they are truly some of the most elegant expressions of Cabernet Franc in Saumur-Champigny and certainly the Loire Valley. If you have a favorite cuvée from Arnaud Lambert, Cabernet Franc or otherwise, because he does make some fabulous Chennons as well, do let me know what your favorite cuvée is in the comments below. And of course, as always, I will be back again soon with another wine. Cheers.